Hello, everyone. I have a special guest today that I've been actually really looking forward to speaking with. His work is fascinating, and I really can't wait for him to share all about it. His name is Mike Martin, and his YouTube is My Dark Explorations. Mike has written incredible books. He's going to talk a little bit about his experience, how he's come to a lot of this information. We're going to go as deep into the rabbit hole as we can. No, what did they say? No holds bar.
Hmm.
So I am very much looking forward to it. But before, Mike, before you get into talking a little bit about all of this, I want to read what you've written on your YouTube so people can have a foundation of what it is you do.
Okay.
So on Mike's YouTube, in his My Dark Explorations, it's also on Rumble. He's written, I've developed this channel to help you. The information I present is based on my own personal experiences of more than 3 decades of explorations utilizing portals in multiple states of consciousness, alternate realities, dimensions, the astral, the dream state, and beyond. Fascinating. So here we go. Mike, tell us a little bit about how this all happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some of the people that have already heard me, I'll kind of summarize it a little bit different than I normally do. I began experiencing out-of-body experiences at a very young age that I didn't know what they were. When I got older, I read about astral projection and it intrigued me. I didn't know that that's what I had experienced as a child, so I went
Mm.
after it full force. And for me, in order to believe anything, I have to experience it for myself. So I'm just that type of a person. And so I spent about a year going through different processes to find out. After finding a book called uh, Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe, that's what intrigued me the most. And I tried a few of his suggestions of how he did it. And then I tried some other things. And I ended up coming up with deciding on a setup that where I was going to go ahead and ask myself many times during the day if I was asleep or awake, look at an item, and then turn away and look again. And if it hadn't changed, I knew that I wasn't in the dream state. And then I would do that many times during the day, sometimes 10 or 20 or more. And this is over an 11-month period. So I was doing this on a constant basis, hoping that sometime that I was going to be in a dream and that I was going to ask myself that or realize that I was dreaming. I was going to use lucid dreaming as a gateway into the astral. So basically, what happens is if you happen to be in a dream and you consciously wake up and you go, hey, I'm here. And you can tell yourself in your mind that you want to have an out of body experience. And at that point, you're supposed to be able to be whisked into the astral. Well, I tried that eventually after about 11 months, and that did happen. That did work. And I was in the astral. So at that point, I knew that I could that I was successful in a controlled out of body experience. From that point on, I kept working towards the same goal. I kept practicing the same things that I've been practicing for 11 months, thinking that, okay, now that I'm successful, that it should be pretty easy for me to duplicate my first experience. Well, I kept trying and trying and wasn't working that way. I think it might have ended up being a couple months until I was successful a second time. Then, when I was successful in the second time, it ended up being that I was, instead of in the astral, I was actually back in bed with my eyes closed. And I see this image portrayed within the darkness of what you see with your eyes closed. It's this oval image. It looks like almost like a oval camera screen looking down at about a 45-degree angle below at a city by water, and I could see things were moving. So it was a live viewing of whatever I was seeing. It was a live view, and I'm like, what is this? What am I seeing? I don't understand it. I'm not in the astral because I can move my limbs. Because if you're in the astral, you can't move your physical body. If you're in the astral, you can move your spirit body, but you're in two places at one time. So I knew I was in the physical. I knew that if I opened my eyes, I was completely awake. I could move my body. So I knew at that point, I'm here. So I'm seeing this, and it lasts about 30 seconds, and then it goes away. Well, what I was seeing is not only was I seeing this oval image, but around the image was like a frame, like a picture frame, but it was in the same shape of the image. And it had a bunch of foreign writing in it that didn't resemble anything I'd seen before. So I'm spending all my time trying to figure out what it is, how this is connecting, what am I seeing, what does this lettering mean? Just all this different things are going through my head. I write down what I could remember. After it was over, I just opened my eyes and I wrote down in my dream book because I had been keeping a dream log for about 3 years prior to that because I've been trying to find if there was any meaning behind my dreams. So I kept doing what I was doing, and I called this thing a viewing. Didn't know what it was other than just an anomaly is what I called it. So I kept trying to go back into the astral, and every time that I would become lucid within a dream, and I would have a similar, what I call now that I knew they're called portal experiences. What was happening the first couple times they were the oval image, then eventually they were my full peripheral vision. They were different places, different locations, and I would just see them or experience them, but I didn't have any other idea of where they were or connection with anybody within them because usually there wasn't anybody. It was just either foreign locations or maybe looked like local locations. I didn't have any, there was no background on them. So I'm just getting these images and these moving images and connections, but I didn't know what they were. This happened for a long time. Then eventually I started getting more of the same type of writing in these images that would just be like show up in like a form. It looked like it was just like a piece of paper somebody had written on in this writing, and I would see a whole page, and I would get like 2 seconds to look at it, and then another page would appear, and then after 2 more seconds, another. It was almost like I'm trying to. I can't read it, so I don't know what it means, and I have no concept of what the language was because it doesn't look anything like I've seen ever before. So I'm seeing all this, and I keep getting this barrage of different things. No explanations, no anything. I just get them, and they happen haphazardly. So I'm getting these over and over and over. So after about maybe 10 years of having these, I think to myself, well, I can't get in the astral, but I can access it through the dream state because I can still do lucid dreaming at some point. But I always usually end up within this state, but I can still do some dreaming stuff. But it's on a different level than being in the astral. So I'm doing all this stuff. I decide that there's got to be another way for me to connect with these portals. I just still didn't know they were portals. I'm going to figure out what's going on, how I can reconnect with them. And then I realized that our dream state at night is very close to our daydream state during the day. They're very similar brain activity waves. And so I happened to realize during a long drive that there was something behind uh, the daydream state that we were having during the day. So I'm in the daydream while I'm driving, and I kind of see myself riding a bike or whatever. And then behind that, back here, is something else going on. And I just kept seeing something. I called them glimpses because I would just see a small glimpse of something, but I didn't know what it was. So it took me about a year to figure out how I can get behind that. And I kept doing it back and forth, kept trying to duplicate the dream state, the daydream state. Um, what I was doing is I was trying to take my level of understanding of when I was experiencing the portals, which is a hypnagogic state, and then apply that to my daydream state. So that if I got into that same state of mind, maybe I could get behind and access what was going on behind the daydreams.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to do that. Once I was able to do that, then I realized that all of us, it's not just me because we all daydream,
Mm-hmm.
we all dream. We go behind this is we have a connection subconsciously with different alternate realities and different dimensions that we're unaware of because subconsciously our subconscious filters out this information that's happening because we're meant to stay within this earth realm and not know anything on the astral. We're blocked from all this stuff. It's that's why it's so difficult to go from one place to another, and you have to put forth so much effort because most people won't do it because it's all being blocked. Like when you dream, I probably documented dreams for probably at least 30 years, and most of it's just filtered crap. There's really just garbage. There's nothing there that's worthwhile. All it is you're having experiences on the astral at night, but your subconsciousness is only allowing your consciousness to receive filtered information, not what's really happening on there.
Right.
So there are many different areas of filtering and misinformation so fed to us so that we only live within this small bubble of understanding that we all live in. So there's many ways that I've experienced the subconsciousness blocking me from from connecting with what's going on behind the daydream state as well as what's behind the dream state, because I've woken up many times in many dreams and I'm completely lucid. And then when I do that, the dream starts to fall apart because what seemed meaningful to me in the dream state when I became awake started to fall apart. And there was nothing there that was of real value. It just would just destroy itself as I became aware. And our awareness, what basically does is it breaks down that system. So what I ended up finding out over time is I'm going to these places after I was able to go behind the daydream state, which I call the glimpse state. And I was able to consciously um, go to go to other alternate realities and go to different dimensions, is like I did within the portal state during at when I was sleeping, when I woke up. So I started getting all this information from different areas and levels, seeing things from different perspectives. So you got the dream state, you got a hypnagogic, you got the daydream state, you got behind it, got all these different ways to access something similar, but from different perspectives and viewpoints. So I'm getting all this information. And when you first get the ability to go somewhere to maybe the alternate realities or different dimensions, I spend all of my energy just trying to stay focused in order to remain connected to what connection that I have. So if I go there or I see this, all my focus is on what's happening. If my focus starts to, if I try to take any of that focus away from maybe trying to communicate or whatever, then I lose the connection and things fall apart. It takes a lot of energy to remain where you're at. So after after over a decade of just doing the dream state part, Then I started having the ability to communicate or ask questions. And when I did, things changed on those states because they don't want the interaction. They want to feed you information and they want you to absorb it and then accept it. And that's not the way that I am. I was there absorbing the information, absorbing the experience, but I don't accept it. I just take it with a grain of salt. I document it and then I move on to the next one. And then eventually, when I can do it myself, then I begin to ask questions and then I begin to dig deeper. And that's not what they want. That's not a desired aspect of our being there. So I I started back in 2023. I came out with my first book, My Dark Explorations, so that I could explain my portal experiences and the glimpse experiences that I was having, and explain how portals work because I've got a lot of experience with them. I got to the point where I could actually induce a portal, create a portal, and allow it to make the connections. And this is what I do. I utilize them in the glimpse state, the daydream state, in order to connect with these alternate realities at different dimensions. I'm not relying on my subconsciousness to make that connection. I'm allowing my consciousness because we have a three-body system. We have a physical body on the earth plane, we have a spirit body on the astral plane, and we have a soul on the mental plane, and we have a subconsciousness which oversees all of them, which is also connected to everything as well as each individual. And then inside of all that, or within all that, we have our consciousness, which is no mass, and it's the real us. It's the only real us. We're not any of the three bodies, and we're not the subconsciousness. That is what I call the enemy within and without. So we are just the consciousness. So when I'm making these connections, I'm making them conscious. My consciousness is a separate entity, and that's what is imprisoned within this system.
Mhm.
But I'm able to make these connections utilizing that with these other, what I would call places or spaces.
And when you say they don't like that, can you go into the the entity force of what they comprise?
Well, I just want to, when I say they,
Mhm.
that's the only word that
Is
I
it
can
is
think
it
of.
like a logi that is overseeing?
The easiest way to explain it is we're we're like bright stars that create
Hmm.
energy. We are energy is
Yeah.
what we are,
Hmm.
and we're surrounded by a darkness that absorbs our energy. That's the whole purpose
Yeah.
behind us being here. So it absorbs our energy,
Hmm.
and that is the they
Yeah.
in this whole scenario. Because if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be here, and if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here.
Hmm.
So they are absorbing. Now, when it comes down to, okay, what do they look like? Who are they? Or, well, they are multifaceted. They're the ones who obviously oversee the the production of this whole scenario that we're in, whether it's the astral or the physical. They're also the subconsciousness, the whole entity of the subconsciousness. You could call it an AI type of machine, but it's far beyond anything that you could ever understand as being an AI system.
Hmm.
Um, it's and there's so much of the inner workings that we don't really know about or understand. But you can look at it as also when you go. Let me give you an example. When you're in your dream state, and maybe there's a dark entity that's creating a nightmare or
Hmm.
whatever it is, and you see it as a, I don't know, maybe it's a one-eyed monster for you, and maybe to a child it's Dracula, or to me it might be the darkness, like just the blackness from within.
Hmm.
What happens is, since we're physical beings, we base everything on how we visually see it or what it's made out of or whatever. But most of what's doing this is non-physical. They're non-physical. So they can create their own image any way they choose to, and they
Mhm.
can create the landscape any way they choose to,
Mhm.
because this is can actually do this. Not saying on a general physical level right now, but we have the ability to create.
Mhm.
We just don't remember how to do it. But the whole thing is they're creating this whole production around us, and we're just acting out uh, what they're programming us to do in order for us to produce the energy that's required for them to compute. So we're just stuck in this fishbowl living this life, and we're
Yeah.
puppets for them. And we keep following their protocol because we believe that's the only way that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's not really a, when I say they, it's just so vast.
Mhm.
It's really
Yeah.
not just one.
I like to call it the phenomena because it changes no like depending on what your consciousness and subconsciousness is.
Well,
So,
yeah, the subconsciousness, like I said, is part of that, their whole structure.
mhm.
The structure that we're trapped within is, and I call Earth the prison, then I call the astral the prison yard.
Mhm.
The subconsciousness is what I would be considered the warden. It oversees it. So basically,
Mhm.
it's would be sitting up here, and I call it. It's part of what I call the etherical database. Ether makes up the foundation of whatever is created around here,
Mhm.
and ether is also an energy that is conscious at some level, and then
Yeah.
it's an intelligent one. So like everything you think and hear and read and could possibly feel or any of your emotions are constantly being read, and it knows everything that you've ever had or known. It knows everything, so there's nothing that you can do that it doesn't know ahead of time what's going to happen. It's in charge. It's connected to you in every way. It's an intelligent energy that monitors everything, monitors all of us.
Mhm.
So what's happening is, and when you're, and it knows that if you fear a certain thing, then it's going to expose you that when the need for fear is there, then you're going to be subjected to it. And it's just like all they're doing is we're their cattle, and they're the predators right now, we're
Mhm.
the prey. And my idea, my solution to our problem, our plan, and I produced it about I don't know 2 months ago, is called the solution. What it is it reverses the role of the predator prey scenario. We become the predator, and they become the prey. It's the only way that we're going to get ourselves out of the situation, because you can't manipulate the masters of manipulation. You have to, instead of trying to beat them at their own game, you have to draw them into your game and then beat them at your game.
And then by beating them at their game,
We're gonna
how,
they're gonna we're gonna beat them at our game.
well, at our game, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but how, what does that look like?
Well, they require us to emit energy in order to
Hmm.
feed them. So just like as like a motor can either be an energy consumer or a
Hmm.
generator, one way
Hmm.
or the other.
Right.
We can do either. We can
Hmm.
consume energy and we can generate energy. My idea was to go ahead and take our energy back from them, because if there's nothing here for them to benefit from,
Hmm.
then there's no sense in being here. They won't be here.
Hmm.
And the mechanism that keeps us also chained within this system also requires energy to keep it going.
Hmm.
So my plan is to reverse the flow of energy from them to us. We bring back our energy, and I lay out a scenario. This all Since they're non-physical,
Yeah.
the only way that we're going to be able to do this is through a non-physical process, which is how we normally create.
Hmm.
We see things physically, and that's how we're supposed to believe everything works, is on a physical basis, because that's how we're trained, that's how we're programmed.
Hmm.
So what I do is bring back our ability, the reminder to us that we have the ability to work within and without,
Hmm.
and walk people through how to produce their own production of creating this. And as people get better at it, it's like lifting weights.
Hmm.
You go to the gym for the first couple times, or you walk on the treadmill, maybe you only go a mile and a half, feel like you're pouring out. You're like, okay, well, I really want to work up to, go farther and farther. So next thing you know, maybe 2 months down the line, you might be up to 10 miles and
Hmm.
you're not out of breath, or you're bench pressing 150 pounds, after a couple months. Like, hey,
Hmm.
it's a muscle. You have to exercise your muscle in order for it to work. Well, we have these mental muscles or these non-physical muscles that we need to exercise, and we need to remember how we utilize them because they're not needed here because we're told that doesn't exist. So what I do is go through the process and the exercise of showing people how to do this. And as we begin to look within ourselves, because I tell people that we need to be independent and self-reliant.
Hmm.
And don't look to me, don't look to anybody else
Yeah.
for guidance. Look within yourself.
Hmm.
Because the more you start to look within, the more you believe in yourself, the more powerful you become, and the more resilient and the more self reliant you become. Because
Hmm.
at some point, you're going to realize, hey, I don't need anybody for this or anything else. I don't need to be a dependent person.
Hmm.
I'm fully independent and I can do it all myself. And that's how everybody should think. I want people to be independent. I want to foster independence. That's the
Hmm.
whole purpose behind this. So, what I've discovered is there's so much more out there. And I want other people to discover that there is so much more out there for them. I mean, I probably haven't seen a tenth of 1% of what we have the ability to do, but
Hmm.
without um, without looking within, there's no way you're going to understand that or discover that. You can't experience what you haven't experienced. And then again, you can't unexperience something that you have experienced.
Hmm. To me, it sounds when you're talking about your experience, how you trained yourself to go into the dream state consciously awake. To me, that seems like that's the real conscious state, and not the quote awake state during the day when you're running errands and everybody thinks that they're being conscious, but they're not really.
This is the funny thing that I tell people. I
Hmm.
go, when you're first born, you have to learn how to talk and you have to learn how to walk and you have to learn how to do all these things. It takes, months or a year or more to do a lot of these functions that are just normal humanly functions.
Hmm.
First time I went on the astral, or the first time I go into these states, I don't have to be taught how to use telepathy.
Hmm.
I don't need to be taught how to fly
Hmm.
or all these things are just natural. They
Right.
happen. I didn't even have to really be taught how to open these portals. It just I was exposed to it enough like and nobody showed me. I was like, well, maybe if I just do this
Hmm.
and that'll work. So and it did.
Hmm.
So we're utilizing things that are just normal.
Yeah.
We don't have to be taught.
Hmm.
Nobody's there to teach us. So when you look at things in this nature, you realize this is where we belong.
Hmm.
This is foreign to us.
Hmm. Right. When you went in and you started asking questions which they did not like, did you get the answers?
No, no. What happened was when I first started going there, it kind of like seemed like I tell people it's like if you go to I guess if you go somewhere like the pyramids for the first time,
Hmm.
all the tourists attract all the tourists, all the guys that are tour guides
Hmm.
are going to realize you're a newbie and they're all going to flock around you and tell you about, hey, I've got the great place to go for you and everything. They know you're a foreigner, so
Hmm.
they know that they could sell you something. And that's kind of how everybody kind of had an idea. And a few of them told me, hey, we can show you how to keep those portals open. And to me, that was red flag number one. I
Hmm.
knew that wasn't going to happen. I was being realistic and I just wanted to go there and experience it. And they would offer just snippets of information, but usually they would go into this I don't know, this long kind of explanation of just generalized, I call it crap. I mean, it's like stuff you would hear on the street from somebody that would just
Right.
talking. There was
Hmm.
nothing there of value. I thought, wow, I basically come all this way and there's nothing there that I even want to hear. It's like no free energy. know how to save the world. Nothing. No, nothing of that nature. It was just general nothing. I did hear there was a few things of value that I did hear. I saw this one guy. He was at the end of this tunnel, Stark Tunnel, and he said, yes, these are portals. And he said, um, and it, well, when I say he said, he didn't say, it's in telepathy,
Mhm.
but it was a male sounding
Mhm.
in my head. And he said, what you see on this end, which means if I see 100 foot wide and 100 foot tall on that end,
Mhm.
that's what they see on my end. So
Mhm.
I'm not invisible to them.
Right.
I'm just as visible as they are.
Yeah.
So, there's things like that nature. And then a couple times there was some conversations about me. And then I thought,
Mm.
this sounds like an egotistical massage. Yeah, I didn't buy into it. I'm like, I'm
Mm.
not, I'm not here to be massaged and I'm not here to be a cuck or anything like that. I'm not here to buy into anybody's crap. I'm here to learn and to experience and go from there. And it's just, yeah. So
Wow.
I saw through the the
Manipulations.
the manipulation and just like the shiny surface is what it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started going back there, then I had the ability to really interact.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, everybody was gone. I was by myself.
Wow.
I was by myself, and I thought, you know what? That's kind of cool. But I did have an experience when I ended up in this one spot because I never knew where I was going to be. I just ended up in these places.
Mm-hmm.
There was a ceremony going on with eight, I think it was eight different avatars, and these were spiritual beings moving these avatars around. I knew there was some form of hierarchy, but I believe they were more towards the top of the line. So, like, if you went to a Catholic church, this would be like on the Pope level type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I could just kind of feel, you can feel when something's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't happy with me being there. And I think I got kind of blocked from that. But also,
Wow.
it, I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
that you just know there's something there, but you just can't put your finger on it,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I go through this not as much as I used to
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times what I'll see is the same stuff or it's just pretty plain. But I think the biggest part of my experiences is is the ability to share with other people that there's something going on far beyond even what we see,
Mm-hmm.
and the manipulation and everything is it's just so openly widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Is our bubble, encompasses all of our experiences, is really well, it's under a, a good lock and key system.
Yeah. And how do you think we got here?
That's my next question that I'm working on. I mean, in my experience or my thoughts right now, it was some form of a lure and a trap
Mm-hmm.
scenario.
Yeah.
That's where my next question lies, and we'll see if I can get an answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I think for me, and no matter how many answers for questions that I get or how much information I try to pass on, it all comes down to one thing. We are our own worst enemies when it comes to anything because if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for us feeding them, then they wouldn't be here. It's almost like, we have put out this cat food for these stray cats, and now the stray cats are attacking us,
Yeah.
but we keep putting the food out even
Yeah.
though we're scared of them. So it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, people are their own worst enemies because they become complacent
Mm-hmm.
within their own within their own false sense of security that they
Mm-hmm.
have.
The illusion's very grand.
Right, the illusion of free, the illusion
Yeah.
of their own personal freedom. It's very grand, And people think that, oh no, it's not that bad. Or even though they know it's that bad and
Hmm.
they've experienced how bad it is, they still feel more secure within that prison cell than they do taking the opportunity to try to get out of
Hmm. I always found that the body, the way it runs like a battery and it shuts down like a battery, it runs out of juice. And every night you've got to go to bed, you've got to go to sleep. Um, you experience these waves of fatigue that don't make sense. Like there's a lot of things about the interfacing of these physical bodies that I feel have been designed for this.
it. Oh yeah, I mean, you're programming at nighttime. You got to have you go to sleep, and then the programming begins at night
Hmm.
because your subconsciousness takes over, and your consciousness is sitting back here. Your subconsciousness is doing all this, and
Hmm.
then sending it back this junk,
It is
filthy
junk.
junk.
Hmm.
Yeah. So basically, and then we go out and then from all the junk that we receive, we go back out and all the day and we go through our robotic motions or through the play and we do all this and then we come back at night, get
Hmm.
all this crap again. And, it's just over and over. But I tell people 8 to 10 hours or how much ever you sleep during the day, you're not in control.
Hmm.
So think about it. You're giving away a third of your life, just by whatever. And then when people go to a job where they don't really have to think, they're autonomous maybe for another 6 out of 8 hours
Hmm.
during the day. So their subconscious is in charge there.
Yeah.
And when you're commuting every day, who knows how long of that trip you're subconsciously controlled. So
Hmm.
most of the time, we're not even being controlled. We're not even in control of our own lives,
Yeah.
even during the day.
Hmm.
We're so out of control and so used to just easily just handing the wheel over
Hmm.
and trusting in that.
Yeah, it is terrifying. I also think that there's a relationship and a connection. So, in my background, I've had extreme paranormal experiences ever since I was little. I mean, like crazy extreme stuff. And I've had so much of it that I had to try and figure out, okay, what's going on here, right? Because the interaction of the experiences is going to want you to believe that it's isolated,
Right.
right? That this phenomenon is only this, okay?
And it
And
also works hard
mhm,
to try and make you disbelieve and forget even though you've experienced it for yourself.
yes, yes. But eventually I came to the conclusion it's really all the same phenomenon. It just changes. And you know, the other thing which is also an interesting psychokinetic ability, right? So there's some that have, these psychokinetic abilities that happen usually out of control. So when you're really under stress or you're upset, you can have an effect on things. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
Mhm.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
And to me, that's kind of like tapping into the creator ability, but it's gone rogue. Like you can't control it. So your subconscious is somehow controlling it and doing it, but you're not understanding how it works.
um, I want to add to that now. I just I disconnect the subconsciousness from that because
Hmm.
I don't believe it has anything to do with what the way we really want things to work out and when they work out that way.
Right, right.
Subconsciousness is a different entity part of that.
Hmm.
I believe when we have those instances, and even like an instance where, say, like a guy gets in a car wreck and his wife's trapped into the car and he can lift the car up. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a good example of it. Now,
Hmm.
from my experiences, not long after I started all this, then I started getting these energy rushes, and I didn't know what they were.
Hmm.
I didn't realize what they were until I started going through the reintroduction of me into these nightmarish states about, I don't know, 12 or 15 years ago. And what would happen is every time I was approached by this darkness, just like when I was a kid, I would be pulled out and I would be into a portal experience. And it was basically what it was doing is it was training me to um, as I started to get all aggravated, you get all
Mm-hmm.
tense in the
Mm-hmm.
dream, you start to release energy. It would stop me, pull me out of the portal, and and then what it was doing, it was desensitizing me to that experience. So if it got kept pulling me out and out and out,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it wouldn't affect me the same way because it was like, okay, I've been through this 50 times in the last year and now
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
So what it did is it kept doing that over and over. So eventually, yeah, I got into the dream and I wasn't expelling that energy when
Mm-hmm.
that darkness started to encroach around me. It was a threatening feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to face it within one or two of the dream states, but I was lucid during these times. And at that time, I held my composure
Mm-hmm.
and I went face to face with it. And then I walked away. And at that point, I was proving to be this or they that I have the ability to control my energy. I'm not going to expel my energy for
Mm-hmm.
your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So what I said was, you know what? If I can, I'm creating this energy and I can contain it, then I can also absorb it. And that's part of what the solution video that
Right.
I had. We can absorb that energy and we
Mm-hmm.
can maintain it. That's part of what we do, and we're not taught that. So, what I
No.
said was, when we're in those situations, and I know now because I've been in those situations several times, what's happening is you're in that situation and you're unknowingly releasing that energy.
Mm-hmm.
That energy
Right.
is um, the force that allows that changed event to take place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the subconsciousness, it's us,
Mm-hmm.
but we're unknowingly doing it. If we have the energy, if
Right.
we've expelled that energy and we happen to be in a situation where we're kind of low because you've been sick or something, you might not be as well versed in it. But yeah, that's what's happening. We're energy beings, and because we're so normally, it's like if you're a mother that has 5 kids and you're breastfeeding, you're only going to have so much milk available to feed your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So but if you go for a week and you haven't fed your kids, then obviously you're going to,
Yeah.
have more available. Well, that's the same thing with us. If we're constantly being drained and we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly, then that's why we don't have the energy that we need in order to do the things that we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of well, two examples I think are good are one, creating a poltergeist, right? It's common when you have like let's say a, a very violent environment or abusive environment and there's children and one has psychokinetic abilities, they'll create a poltergeist. Then the poltergeist attacks the kids, right? The kid's being attacked by the poltergeist. But the kid doesn't realize that she or he created the poltergeist, right? So now it's like this thing that you're relating to on the outside of you and you're giving away your energy because you're terrified. Or a ghost, right? An encounter of a ghost which terrifies you and you do the same thing, right? That fear
Right.
is eaten. It's all eaten. So, and what you're talking about is having the control of understanding how creation works on, you know, the conscious level.
Right. Yeah. And now when you say like a poltergeist,
Hmm.
you know, I'd always believe I obviously knew things in the dream state were real and that sort
Hmm.
of thing. But I never really kind of believed in anything outside. Like I'm thinking,
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't seen it, so I can't believe it. So I kind of took it with a grain of salt
Right.
until about 2 years ago. My wife and I were driving somewhere, and we're going through this mountain pass. It was a sunny day,
Hmm.
everything was cool, and then all of a sudden clouds came in. It got real foggy, and just like this weather came out of nowhere. And which in Arizona, it's not that uncommon. So we're going through the desert, and I'm driving, and I happen to see something ahead, and I'm like, "This is really weird." My wife was in a motorhome. She was going to the bathroom or something. And I saw this, and I just kept looking at it. I'm like, "This doesn't look right." And the closer I got to it, there was now, I would say when I first saw it, it was, I don't know, maybe 100 feet ahead. But what it looked like is basins of water. Now, if you had these
Mhm.
clear glass bowls, maybe 10 foot in diameter, shaped like a sink, big clear glass bowls, as if there was 5 or 6 of them suspended midair, maybe anywhere from 3 to 20 feet off the ground. It was raining and the water was pooling in these invisible glass bowls. And I'm like, that can't be real. This has got to be some kind of a, you know, weird visual effect that I'm getting. But it wasn't, because the sun wasn't really, it was bright enough to see. The closer I got to it, there was a real harsh wind, side wind, that hit the front of the vehicle, and those pools of water all slammed against the vehicle at the same time. It was almost like invisible hands were holding them. And I'm like, I have no question in my mind that there isn't something that is like part physical, part non-physical,
Yep.
that are completely integrating with what's going on in
Yeah,
our lives.
exactly. Yeah, and I get it. A lot of people have to witness this stuff, experience it for
Right.
themselves to believe it.
Even me, I mean, I believe in a lot of things, but unless I've really experienced it,
Hmm.
I don't have anything to, really, there's no foundation there.
Hmm. Hmm.
But once I experienced that, I'm like, there's absolutely no question in my mind that, yeah, that was something that was, far beyond anything that I'd experienced. Then that was on a physical
Wow.
level. That wasn't anything in a dream. It was driving. You're
Right.
completely awake when you're driving. Yeah. So,
And what do you think? I mean, that's a strange kind of phenomenon to appear, right? It's a very odd kind of thing to witness. You're not seeing a cryptid, you're not seeing like a ghost walking. It's a
right.
weird,
There was like no image there other than the fact that I see a
yeah,
physical element being pulled and all that. And it's just like, it really didn't make sense when I saw it, because it's just like, that doesn't make sense. There's
yeah.
nothing there to hold it, you
Hmm.
know? And so, yeah, it's like, um, I knew there was obviously some form of energy there, but then again, I know, and I've spoken to a lot of people, some of the shows that I was on, they talk about Bigfoot and they talk
Hmm.
about Dog Man and that
Hmm.
sort of thing too. I said, I don't really have any experience or any knowledge of what those, but I do have a theory that I believe a lot of these creatures, especially the ones that are the most popular ones,
Hmm.
have the ability and to work within the non-physical and physical world by moving within without. It's like a frequency. They can run between frequency ranges so they can be seen and not seen.
Hmm.
They have the ability to change, either visual or not. Like a lot of the UFOs, they say, okay, well, the UFO is here and then it disappeared. Well, maybe
Hmm.
it didn't disappear. It's still there. It's just out of our visual range.
Right.
Our visual range is very small. And to
Hmm.
go in and out of our visual range is not that big of a deal.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, if you think about how quickly and how fast an atom can spin, and if you have the capacity to make that spin even faster, you can become invisible to everything
Right,
here,
right.
right?
If we can inhabit a physical
Hmm.
and a non-physical body, then what means that something else can't?
Hmm. Exactly. So when you witnessed the portals, when you started experiencing these portals showing up with the writing around, um, and you were, uh, do you think you would have been able to put your hand through it? Do you think you would have been able to, actually physically?
Well, no, because when I'm in the hypnagogic state, when I'm in bed, I'm
Hmm.
seeing those. I could raise my hands and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
and I tried that. If I
Hmm.
take my physical hand and I
Yeah.
reach it up and like this right here, I see it in my physical view.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking through the third eye, there's no visual aspect
Oh.
of that happening. But what happened is, after about maybe, I don't know, a year or so of having these experiences, I was able to enter one of the portals, and I actually entered into it. And I was in, it looked like somewhere maybe by the Black Forest in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And I was over this trail, kind of floating over this trail, and I saw some footprints in like this kind of moist dirt by the trail, and I was kind of following it. And in the portals, what happens is if my energy level starts to get kind of low, it either flashes or pixelates. I knew
Mm-hmm.
it was time that I had to get out. I went out real quick. What happens is when there's a portal connection, it uses some form of that energy that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you have a connection, whether it's through the glimpse state behind your daydream
Mm-hmm.
or it's through the dream state, you utilize some of that energy. And what I noticed was when I first started having them, I could have one night, but if I had one the second, so the first night, if I had one, it was 4K
Mm-hmm.
quality, video quality, and it would last maybe 30 seconds. If I had one the very next night, it was maybe 180 um, uh, p video quality
Yeah.
and maybe last 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
If I had one the third night, the video quality would be way below 480 and it would maybe last 6 or 7 seconds. So what happens is if I have these experiences, quite a few in a row, they just become really short and not very visually clear.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I realized that it takes a certain amount of my energy to keep these open. So if I wait a week or a couple or 5 days and I have another one, it's back to original quality and it's lasts 30 seconds and it's fine. So um and also it'll
Wow.
start to flash too and let me know that it's ending or it just pixelates really bad. So over time I got better at it so that if I had one and then had one the next night, I could keep it open longer because I was able to either retain more energy or something of that nature after much time of doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I learned how
Wow.
to not when I had experiences in life, how to not um, how to not distribute my energy. Like if I got super happy or whatever, you happen to let a lot of it. No, I really keep I keep
Even.
I keep control of which energy that I release or what I'm doing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because normally we just do it out. It's like our thoughts. Your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts wander all over. Your emotions are all over. But when you begin to get in control of yourself, then you can put a cap on everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand what's happening and then control it at that point. But if you don't understand the
Right.
methodology of it, then you don't know how to control it. So at certain times of your life, like say if you happen to go outside and you hear something behind you and it kind of, makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck,
Mm-hmm.
then you can control that versus, used to release energy and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
there's different ways to do things, but you kind of learn over time what works and what doesn't. But it's just all trial and error.
Yeah, and when you keep yourself at a like I just like to call it flatlining, right? You're not like you're not positive or negative. You're just at a flat line. I find that there's not a whole lot of engaging going on between whatever this reality is, right?
Yeah, you don't want to buy into a bunch of the crap. I
Hmm.
mean, my thing is, it's like I think a lot of people um, are the most vulnerable when they're around other people, and that's because they get sucked into all the drama and
Hmm.
all the emotional crap that happens because people induce it
Yeah.
into each other. I mean, and when you're around a large group of people, either you're going to be happy
Hmm.
or you're not going to be because you're affected by the energy level of the people around you.
Right.
So for me, I don't generally get into large groups and stuff. I mean, it's just not what I
Yeah.
do.
Hmm.
But I mean, you have to be in control of yourself, and then it's really hard to control yourself when you're usually around people that are either not positive or that you kind of in order to control yourself, you have to get in control first, and then be able to control yourself around other people, which sometimes is more of a job to try to maintain that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of unlearning.
Right. Because, people, if somebody can say something to you and piss you off, they triggered you. That means they had full control of your emotions and your feelings.
Hmm.
And if you allow somebody else control of you, then where does it end?
Exactly. So did you ever figure out what the letters were? What kind of writing that was? Like that is a very interesting thing. It's
It was obviously there was sending. I think around the original one was a
Mhm,
description of what that was.
mhm,
To me, that was like it's almost like a postcard. You would have the,
mhm,
Hawaii or Honolulu or whatever it was, and then the letters that I got with all that writing on
mhm,
there, I think there were messages or whatever. I don't know because I don't have a
mhm,
photographic memory,
mhm,
and
mhm,
it was in a language that doesn't even look like anything. When I say that what I think it looked like was a mixture between hieroglyphics,
mhm,
like that fancy Celtic writing, and then three-dimensional like images.
mhm, mhm.
So it's just like it was all mixed
Right.
together, and it didn't make any sense because if you don't have anything to compare something to,
Mhm,
it's hard. And it's like if I just looked at one letter or one symbol or whatever and just had to copy that, that's fine.
mhm.
But when you got 50 on there and
Right.
you only got 30 seconds to look at it along with trying to figure everything else out, yeah, it doesn't work out that
Mhm. Do you think that they they knew you were going to be doing this, so when you were a kid, they tried to get to you?
way. I haven't said anything about this. I don't think I've told anybody else
Mhm,
about this. But I don't know. After I came out with my first or second book, I haven't seen my mom in a long time, and she read it, and then she called me up. She goes, "I didn't tell you this because I didn't think it was relevant. I didn't think you would have it would have any value to you, but I'll tell you now." She said, she goes, "You were about, I don't know, very young, and you were sick. You're sick a lot when you're young." She said you had, I guess, lot of breathing problems. So she goes, "I was in there with you, and it was you were struggling to breathe, and I finally got you to sleep. And I went back in the room, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting to hear if you make any noise in the next room." And she goes, "I looked up, and there was something standing in the doorway. It wasn't a physical human being, but it had an image, and I couldn't move." She goes, "It wouldn't let me get up or go through the door." She goes, "I couldn't wake up your dad." She goes, "It was there for a matter of a couple minutes, and then finally it disappeared, and I was able to get up and go check on it." She goes, "But I don't. I had a ton of nightmares when I was a kid. I had a lot of would think lucid
mhm,
abductions. It seemed like
mhm,
and everything. I thought that was normal, but I always knew there was something
mhm,
going on. But I don't have anything to back that up. I
mhm,
don't have any experiences to say, okay, it was this. So
mhm,
for me, it was an experience that I can't put any
mhm,
real. There's nothing to back it up. So
mhm, mhm,
I don't know what it was. Because I never got to see a
mhm.
face or I never got to see an image. And even if I did, now I know that I couldn't trust it because
Right.
they can make themselves look like anything they want to.
Mhm. And did you ever remember having experiences where you were looking at shadow men, or you were having,
No,
strange.
what I would do, what would generally happen when I was a kid, it was very similar. These
Hmm.
nightmares were all very similar.
Hmm.
I would be running from something. I
Hmm.
didn't know what it was.
Hmm.
Then my arms and legs would become like numb, like when they start to fall asleep. So
Hmm.
I would lose the ability to run. I would lose my ability to scream, and then my vision would become blurry. And
Hmm.
that's generally when I would either be grabbed and taken somewhere that I don't remember anything, or I would just, that was it.
And do you think that's a real experience? Like you were actually being
Oh,
confronted by it? Yeah.
yeah, because most of what those were is they were lucid because
Hmm.
a lot of times my mom said that I would wake her up. And she
Hmm.
said when I went in there, she goes, "You had your eyes open and you were awake." you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they were real enough to me to where I can remember them as if
Mm-hmm.
it almost happened recently.
Right.
I mean, usually a dream, I've had regular nightmares and they didn't seem like
Mm-hmm.
that big deal. But like the lucid dreams, like when the darkness was approaching me and stuff within these last 10 years or whatever, I was wide awake. I was lucid within these. There
Mm-hmm.
was, as soon as it started, I woke right up because that's how I used to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, when that started happening, my mind would wake up,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still in that scenario where I couldn't escape.
Right.
So that's
Mm.
what it was like when I was a kid, too. So, and I didn't know the difference. I didn't
Yeah.
know what lucid dreaming was because until I started doing it, I'm like, yeah, this is the same crap that used to happen when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. And it happened a lot when you were a kid.
Yeah, it happened
Mm-hmm.
enough to where I used to remember it all the time. People
Mm-hmm.
would ask me, hey, what do you dream about? I'm like, I don't dream about nothing. I don't talk about it because,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think you're going to be I grew up in the 70s. You didn't talk about stuff like that because they send you
Mm-hmm.
to the state hospital.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't anything good. I didn't want to be known as that weird kid, so I didn't talk about any of that stuff.
So what do you think happens when people die with this they?
I really I can't answer that. I do know that there's a lot of people that do believe
Mm-hmm.
that when you die, then you get to make this decision of whether you want to come back, which I think, okay, even if that were true, they would put you in some type of illusional state, like they
Mm-hmm.
can in the dream state,
Right.
and create an illusion, and you would agree with it whether you wanted to or not. Because if there was some way that you could get out of it when you
Mm-hmm.
died, nobody would be here. I
Mm.
mean, come on.
No, exactly. Yeah. Do you think?
So
Mm.
sorry. Good. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know because I don't remember it, and I
Mm-hmm.
haven't gone back and had an experience to where I was in that state to do that. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the reasons why I'm not allowed kind of in the astral state because
Mm-hmm.
I've always been redirected, maybe for it's for another reason, but I know that the astral is just a very misleading place, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't spend any time there.
Mm-hmm. When you have gone to the astral, were you ever encountered with like entities like trying to attack you? Have you had the experiences of being in these different places and
Well, like in that, well, I would say the dream state
mm-hmm,
is still within the astral, and that's the
mm-hmm,
only time that basically I'm on the astral.
mm-hmm,
The rest of it are either in alternate realities or different dimensions.
mm-hmm,
And I would say that most of what I've experienced on those is probably not much different than what happens in the astral because
yeah,
they can mimic or duplicate whatever that you want to see or that you
mm-hmm,
think you should want to see. I don't think there's that much of a difference when it comes down to how things can be manipulated. So I think
mm-hmm,
from my experience and through the dream state, there's probably not a lot of difference in that.
mm-hmm. Do you think that this phenomenon, let's just call it, has altered our genomes so that everybody has a timer that is very short, like you only live to be 80, 85, maybe 100. Um, do you think that there's something about them hacking the genome and altering our physiology so that, we only last a certain amount of time and we're constantly being recycled?
I don't think they need to go that far because they have other control abilities there. I mean,
Hmm.
you think about it, the subconscious is within you. If they wanted you to go through a certain specific uh, accident or something of that nature,
Hmm.
they could easily just, they're in charge of the way how the system works. I think we kind of overstress the fact that, um, like even if you look at things of this nature, say like, okay, well, they're poisoning our food. Okay,
Hmm.
you can say
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Well, it's not by just poisoning the food to make you
Hmm.
sick. It's also the fear of.
Hmm.
It's also knowing that.
Hmm.
So what
Hmm.
they do is they propose these things, they do these things, and then you find out about it, and it makes the situation worse.
Hmm.
When if they just wanted to
Right.
kill you, then they would just kill you.
Hmm.
But the threat of killing you is
Hmm.
worse than killing you because you are feeling the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You are admitting the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about the process.
Mm-hmm.
They're about the process, not about the end result. It's about the process.
Do you think based on what they're doing, which is eating us, okay? Do you think that so they're taking from our prime energy, and let's just say they're recycling this one person, over and over and over again. So we're talking about however many lives, let's just say 10,000 lives. Do you think that at the end of that 10,000 years or 10,000 lives, they have less actual prime energy than they did when they began as a creation?
I think, well, going through the alternate realities, I think we might be living a million lives apiece all the
Mm-hmm.
time. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I mean, when I think they say how many people, how many alternate realities think we have, it's
Mm-hmm.
unlimited. How many dimensions
Yeah.
are? They're unlimited. There's two-dimensional worlds. There's everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could potentially be living a trillion lives simultaneously. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but we're not just living one life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living within other beings that,
Mm-hmm.
from what I see, look like me.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why we're connecting with them constantly is because we're connected with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how many of these places there are.
Mm-hmm.
There could be an unlimited supply. So, like when I say, oh, yeah, they're sucking our energy from 8 billion people,
Mm-hmm.
it could be 800 trillion billion people
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously.
Right.
It could be how many Earths or how
Mm-hmm.
many other habitats. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows? But it's not just here. It's
Right.
when I say it's a multifaceted, multi-layered
Mm-hmm.
uh, system, it's it's beyond our physical understanding of what we like. If we say the universe, we think the universe is like an unlimited thing. But
Mm-hmm.
if you knew there was an unlimited amount of unlimited universes, how
Mm-hmm.
could you how could you understand that? You
Mm-hmm.
know, so I think we're
Right.
far beyond. It's far beyond this just little ball that we're
Yeah.
living on. It goes way beyond what we could even imagine.
Right. Yeah, because time doesn't exist and
Right.
everything is in the
And
now.
everything is here. Everything is
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
stacked on top of each other,
Yeah.
and so we're all just here at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
and when I see, and I've been doing the alternate reality thing for I don't know since I don't know 12 years or something. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen the same one twice. So
Mm-hmm.
who knows how many there are? I mean, I don't know. And when I say I visit it, sometimes I see it, and other times I'm there. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, if I'm there, that means I'm probably also this person or
Mm-hmm.
this being. I I just don't know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. It really is.
Yeah, it's just it just makes your head spin, is what it does.
Mm-hmm. So, do you see humanity getting out?
Well, if we don't try, then we're never going to succeed. And
Mm-hmm.
I tell everybody, I believe that if you're going to escape from somewhere, it's from the inside is your best
Mm-hmm.
bet. It's like they say, if you're going to hack into a system, hacking in from within than from the outside is much easier. So that's why I proposed it. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the more people we get, is the better the chances. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's if we don't have any options and we have one now, then
Mm-hmm.
that's what we should try. But you know, my thinking is if you've got a bunch of people that are sold into a prison system,
Mm-hmm.
and even if they are freed, would they even choose to walk out and escape? That's the question you have to ask.
Yeah, that is.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of people don't like taking responsibility.
right? And they feel more secure with the system. So it's like, wow, it was just easier when we were prisoners. Then now we have to work for ourselves. We might want to do that.
So, have you ever had a student that was extremely gifted at being able to access these
I've never
places?
had any students.
No, oh, you don't teach it.
I've always worked alone.
Yeah, okay. Right. But your
I
books
mean,
help
uh,
to
there was a
teach people.
there was a couple people that showed some interest, but nobody
Hmm.
followed through. So it's like
Okay.
I think the hardest part for people in general
Mm-hmm.
is to put forth the amount of time or the effort or the drive.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the drive.
Yeah.
For me, I wasn't looking to do this, so it wasn't something I just pinpointed and just went that way.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way I was kind of being led, and it's the way I went. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, then you have to go through it with both feet. So I said, if you're going to run up to a roadblock, then you have to either go through it, go over it, go around it, however you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just decided I go through it. And so when I really want to do something like the out of body thing,
Mm-hmm.
then I push forward and push forward. I just don't give up. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be years before I get an answer or
Mm-hmm.
I found a solution. But that's just the way I work. And I just keep going and going and going. I just don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Now that I've been doing it for a long time, it seems like, yeah, I get a little tired of doing that sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
if I really want the answer or I really want to find out what's on the other side, then I have to continue to do that. There's
Mm-hmm.
no free answers, there's no free anything. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't put forth the effort, then you're not going to get the reward at the very end of
Yeah.
it. And I
Right.
think, nobody wants to hear that, but that's just the way things are.
So when most people open themselves up to these dimensions and portals and these experiences, often what happens afterwards is the paranormal in their own lives, it begins to really ramp up because now you're open to going beyond the veils and it knows you're open. So when you started doing this, did phenomenon start happening to you?
Um, what I found out is something I didn't take into consideration is the all those times that I was experiencing that what I call the darkness, the darkness that came
Mm-hmm.
in on my in my dream state. The more and more that I was exposed to it, the more that I was affected by it. And I and I
Right.
I would describe it as um, like if you take this if you had smoke that was sticky, that had some kind of a sticky substance in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets in your lungs. You breathe it in, it gets in your lungs. I tell
Mm-hmm.
people like, okay, think about it this way: when you smell a smell that you don't like,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening? And molecules from that odor get into your body cavity and are absorbed by your sensory organs. Your
Mm-hmm.
sensory, it actually attach to your sensory organs. That's how you have that smell. So you're actually getting that inside your body, whether you
Mm-hmm.
like it or not. Well, that's what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I started going through some uh, some negative aspects of thinking and all that kind of stuff, and I just like, the hell is this? I don't understand why I'm thinking or feeling this way. And I figured it out after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, okay, well, it's just, you can't be exposed to something without somehow absorbing something
Yeah.
around it and, whatever. So I figured it out. But there was a it was a good side to that because I now had the ability to somewhat think and feel the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So I said,
Oh,
now what
yeah.
I'll do, I'm going to write down what my outlook on this situation, this predator and prey scenario is. And I wrote it down from what I believe
Right.
is their point of view. And then when I did that, I was able to understand more about what our predator and prey scenario was based upon because I could now see more of what they see of us
Mm-hmm.
and just looking at it from our viewpoint.
Right. And you could ascertain that a lot of what you were feeling and thinking was actually coming from them.
Their viewpoint, their
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I
exactly.
think a lot of times people that are probably in the circles that are
Mm-hmm.
either working with these forces or whatever, um, probably think and feel a lot of what that is. And I can understand why a lot of people the way are they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of those people, they don't realize it.
Well, they
They
have no
think,
sympathy or no empathy
yeah.
or yeah, they just don't care about people at all. And when
Mm-hmm.
I tell people that, I think good people have a hard time understanding that there are those people and beings that don't care about humanity whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
that have no sympathy or empathy about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have a hard time believing that, but that's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
That is a
Yeah,
reality.
absolutely. Yeah, it is fascinating when you think it's a reality based on a predator-prey system.
Right.
And then inside the micro aspect of the macro mimics that. It mimics the
Right.
same paradigm.
Right. I mean, if a if a lion is chasing down a gazelle, do you think he is concerned about how the gazelle feels about him? You know, I mean,
Right.
his whole thing is, I want to eat.
Yeah.
If I'm going to eat, then I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There is no thought process of about sympathy or empathy for the animal. It's
Mm-hmm.
just there and to do the job. And that's the situation we're in.
Mm-hmm. When you feel the energy of them, okay, so yes, it has an AI about it, but it's not just AI. So it is something, it is a consciousness that is eating and it's consuming. But when you feel into it, what kind of an entity do you think this is?
It's not has nothing to do with hate and
Yeah.
and and that sort of thing. What it is, it's a it's an intelligent energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very intelligent, but it's doing what any other, I don't know, being would do in order to survive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And their protocol is manipulation and illusion.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and they're very good at it. When I say masters, they're far beyond the mastery level.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good you think you are at it, you're not even on the same planet as these, because that's their forte.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even imagine. It's just, yeah, it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So I do give them credit. I mean, I don't blame them for
Mm-hmm.
being what they are. I have to understand them in order to find a way around how we can get out of our situation. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I think about them enough to get an understanding,
Mm-hmm.
only so I can utilize that information in order to benefit us.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this is what the archons are? The archons
It
that are
could
written
be,
about? Yeah.
it could be, they give them a name, but a
Right.
name and a face,
Mm-hmm.
and it really doesn't have much meaning.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it's just like, and the hard part is, like, a lot of times people want to know
Mm-hmm.
specifics. They want to know why this, why that, why this, why that. And I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to push aside a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that that useless data that doesn't have
Right.
anything to do with getting us where we need to go. I mean, it's nice to have a background on
Mm-hmm.
it, and on certain things, but in reality, what you need is to focus on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
You need
Yeah.
to focus on what we need to do to get out of it. Because if we worry about all the shiny objects that float
Mm-hmm.
around all the time, because we're so used to being ADD on everything,
Mm-hmm.
where everybody's so focused on all this because they've got all these shiny objects running around. You're
Mm-hmm.
so doing this, you're so doing that, you're all worried about everything else. You need to focus on getting out.
Mm-hmm.
Getting out is the only way you're going to get out of the system. And at that point, the other stuff, you can begin to
Mm-hmm.
look at it, but unless you can focus on that, the other
Mm-hmm.
stuff doesn't have any, it's not going to get you out of
Yeah.
it, you know
Yeah. You need enough to understand what you're dealing with in order to know what you need to do.
right? Just to watch a TV, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to understand how that TV functions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Perfect. Can you just talk a little bit about your books? I know I've kept you for over an hour and a half.
All right. My first book was My Dark Explorations, and it's astral and portals and glimpses, and that kind of goes into um my original experiences, how things kind of came about, how I go through these methodologies. The second one's called The Spiritualist Manifesto, A Guide to Freedom. It gets into what you can do in order to free yourself from what I call the game, the system, the way the system controls you and how it controls you. And that is a guide to get people to start breaking away from that. And the last one is Leaving the Illusion of Life, which also continues on where the Spiritualist Manifesto is about getting yourself out of this game. They're all on Kindle. I also have My Dark Explorations YouTube channel and also the Rumble channel under the same name. But my a lot of times, a lot of the videos that I have will also cover what's in the books as well. So I want to get the information out in several formats so that people have the ability to access it. I know I've heard there's certain places like maybe New Zealand or Australia where my books aren't available on Amazon for some reason. So people have to access them online through one of my YouTube channels because I've produced some audiobooks there so people have the ability to access the books if they can't get them online.
Hmm. But mostly people can get them on Amazon.
Right. But like I
Okay.
said, there's a few countries and it seems to be
Hmm.
growing a little bit where people say it's not available in their country. And I
Okay.
know for certain that Australia and New Zealand are two of those countries.
Okay.
I've heard from people that live in those countries.
Mhm. Um, that's amazing. I'm just so glad you've written those books because I think that's going to help a lot of people.
I hope so. And I mean, the whole
Yeah.
the way I kind of looked at it after I've been doing this for a couple of years is if even if at some point this information was available to all 8 billion people on the planet,
Hmm.
I believe that if 8 billion people saw it, maybe only 2% of those 8 billion would even look into that. And then 2% of those maybe look a little further and maybe read more into it. Then maybe 2% of those would take that a little bit more seriously. And maybe another 2% of
Hmm.
those would actually begin to try something. And then 2% of those would actually follow through with what they said they were going to do. And
Yeah.
maybe only 2% of those would ever do anything more about it. So I believe
Right.
that we have this ability
Hmm.
to just write things off because we figure there's somebody else out there that's going to take care of it for us or that should take care of
Yeah.
everything for us because you
Yeah.
know it's their responsibility to make our lives you know secure or better or whatever. And that's what the whole process of the programming is. The programming is teaching us to rely on others so you don't rely on yourself, because if you
Hmm.
rely on yourself then you'll actually go somewhere in life.
Exactly. Yes. And we got to do the work. We have to.
Right. Right.
It's
If
up
you're
to
waiting for
us.
somebody else to do it, then it's never going to happen.
That's what got us into this whole mess.
Right. Right. You allow your representatives to handle it for you and everything else. And guess what? They're
Hmm.
more than happy to take your money and and move on. And I think what I also find is very fascinating, and I find this happening more and more. So there's a lot of experience that I have with this is
Hmm.
people in general will continue to put their faith in others who have already lied and deceived them before they will trust someone who has never lied to them and has always been by their side.
Yep. Look at the whole religious political structure.
Right, right. And I see it all the time. And when I tell people that, they go, well, that doesn't seem realist. I don't think that's really going to happen. And I go, look at it, because you will trust liars
Yeah.
before you will trust your own faithful people.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's not hard to see because
Right.
it's really right there.
Well, see, it's okay. So you just brought that up. It's not hard to see. It's because you're looking.
Hmm.
You look and I look,
Hmm.
and a lot of people are out there looking because I tell people, question everything. Everybody, question
Right.
everything. And so people go through life, and anybody with authority, they will follow without question.
Hmm.
Anybody who has a badge or
Hmm.
any type of authorization or a
Mm-hmm.
status on YouTube or whatever. They follow everybody
Mm-hmm.
because they believe that they somehow know better without
Mm-hmm.
even questioning.
Yep. That's why it's so easy to dupe an entire civilization.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean, so if you think about this entity, I mean, with its ability, given how easy it is for just humans to dupe humans, yeah, it's checkmate system, right?
and what they've done is they've fostered that whole belief system. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
at first we were, we don't trust this or we don't trust that, back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. But we have the physical attributes of feelings and emotions and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But we've been corralled down into this little
Mm-hmm.
path that we've been in with our blinders on the whole times. And
Mm-hmm.
so we just have been programmed
Yeah.
to be that way. We've been programmed to be that way.
Yeah. Um, can you just give me 2 seconds, Mike? Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, that, I mean, there's just so much to say about this because we have run ourselves into a very severe problem more than what people realize or know. And it's not getting any better. It's getting way worse now that they are really pushing the AI.
Yep.
So it's time. Like we're really cornered.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like I said, we're powering our own demise.
Yeah,
It's all about
exactly.
you have to pull the cord off of you, because you're
Exactly.
powering it. Take the cord off of you is the only way it's going to happen. And what I say is, if you've got, even say if we had 10,000 people on the whole earth
Hmm.
out of 8 billion people, okay,
Hmm.
and say the 10,000 were the ones giving everybody orders. Now they're not the ones who are actually doing anything.
Hmm.
We're doing everything. So if they say, okay, get all the meat out of this country, then all the workers would have to do that. And if they know it's wrong, why do it? So if we don't contribute to our own demise, then it won't happen.
Hmm.
So if you hear things that are
Right.
against your morals and everything else, don't follow through.
Right. And I wish people would be able to do that
Right.
with everything.
Right.
We wouldn't be where we are.
If we all start and do it for ourselves and
Yeah,
we do it ourselves, then it'll change.
exactly. I love it. This has been fabulous, Mike. Fabulous.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Um, super appreciate you and your work. I'm so excited.
Look
So I
forward to
want
it.
to thank you and I want to thank everybody and take care.
You too.